Thomas, it's great to have you here. As you know, I've been running a leadership cast series on transformation, but in particular, I wanted to zero in on Africa. And I was super impressed by what you guys are doing in Rwanda. So I thought, I'm going to get everyone here so that we can spotlight Rwanda as a beacon for Africa's transformation. Maybe before we get into the serious conversation about business, I really want to go back to a core part of your history. Several international commentators, diplomats, media outlets, after the aftermath of the genocide, I quote, they said, Rwanda is, or as a failed or hopeless state with little chance of recovery or long-term stability. And just over 3 decades, you guys have not only surpassed that dire description, but you are one of the continent's most remarkable transformation stories. When you reflect on that journey, what stands out the most for you about the spirit, the resilience, and the collective determination of the Rwandan people?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Peter. I think when you say what stands out most, I would really say is our leadership. Our leadership that is visionary enough, that was able to chart a path forward as to how we are going to rebuild as a nation, a society, and our economy, but most importantly, being very intentional as to how Rwanda regains its sovereignty as a nation. And I think the results now show for themselves when you see that now Rwanda is among the fastest growing economies on the continent. That's a testament to very intentionality and visionary leadership. And when you see that Rwanda is also, we're gaining global reputation in terms of good governance, in terms of now tourism and convening, that's also a testament to that growth. And we also have the highest rates of financial inclusion. So there's a lot around how we have become very intentional in being able to grow and also being able to, yes, learn from our past, but the future is ahead. So I think that's one thing that could really stand out. And we do have a vision as a nation, Vision 2050, that we all work towards. So it's the guiding blueprint for all of us. And I think we are all intentional working towards that. Whichever sector you're in or whoever you are, it's a unified front to be able to achieve that.
So what do you believe that the rest of the world still misunderstands about Rwanda and your extraordinary rise? What is that one thing that you would say, anyone watching this, that one thing that is misunderstood about this country and perhaps even the continent as a whole?
Yeah, I would say the continent. Let's first start there because there's this perception. I would say perception risk. And I think, unfortunately, it's also led by media because sometimes media can show you one thing and for one who hasn't been there, perceives it differently. And there's also the perception that Africa is one. We are all one, yet we are different countries, right? It's a continent. And so when it comes to Rwanda, I believe in any country, the scope becomes even more linear. So I think the biggest misconception is really the perception. And you often see it and hear it when people now come on the ground, they tell you a different story. They say, oh, I didn't expect it to look like this. Oh, I didn't expect this to be here. So I think that's the biggest thing we continue to tackle. And I believe also that's what makes us go out there. You know, when you say positioning Rwanda on the continent, it's a way to be able to sensitize, to inform, and also to invite people to come and see for themselves. Geopolitics are now slowly changing, I would say, and now Africa is on the rise and is now the focus point. So I think it's about how we rise stronger and also how we tell our story more aggressively.
So let's zero in on your leadership. So we talked about the broader macro country level leadership that has set Rwanda on this path that you're on. Let's zero in into your leadership. Maybe tell me a bit more about your role, what you do at KIFC, which is the Kigali International Finance Center.
Yes, when we were speaking to Rwanda's Vision 2050, it actually stems from this in terms of how does Rwanda become a high income economy. And so there are different key pillars for economic transformation that have been identified. And one that is critical is the role that the financial services sector plays in being able to help us achieve that accelerated economic transformation. And so I assumed the role last year in July, but I've been with the agency since the beginning. And so with this initiative, it began decades ago, actually, with the feasibility to say, can Rwanda, offer something unique for investors on the continent, investment-wise, for example. There's a lot that happens for people coming to invest in Rwanda, but beyond domestic, I would say, aspirations, can Rwanda also have a unique offering in the region and on the continent?
Sure.
And so that's where this was actually born from, to say, is there an opportunity for Rwanda to serve as a financial services hub? Normally in our region, Nairobi is the go-to. Everyone knows. Every headquarter seems to be there. But in terms of the opportunity for investors to diversify, for investors to be able to structure, especially those with Pan-African interests. And so, yes, the feasibility was done. We came up as an agency about 6 years ago now. And so our role is basically to coordinate the whole ecosystem to ensure that Rwanda is a competitive financial jurisdiction for investors looking to, I would say, more efficiently deploy capital across the continent, not just in Rwanda, but across the continent.
You're obviously doing a great job with this vision, because in December it was reported that since you started operations in 2020,
Yes.
the KIFC has attracted over $1 billion in targeted investment commitments. What do you think Rwanda's unique offering is?
Thank you for that. Yes, for such a short period of time, it is great success. But I think we also leverage Rwanda's DNA, which also helps us a great deal. So when we're looking to position Rwanda as a financial services hub, it's mainly the opportunity we offer for investors to consolidate their operations through Rwanda, to structure their investment vehicles or entities through Rwanda to more effectively deploy capital. And what are the critical foundations? Is there good governance, right? Are there institutions that oversee and execute? Is it easy to set up and execute? Is the country open to allow for ease of cross-border investment? Is it also open to allow for easy entry, and exit? Are there any restrictions, for example, on foreign currency or repatriation? So Rwanda already is good at that. What we introduced is more the framework, the policies, the regulation, to be able to now offer this uniquely for investors who are looking for that. What we are introducing is also the ecosystem around fund managers, fund administrators, the international law firms and tax advisors who can now facilitate investors to structure easily. So Rwanda already has a strong backbone that we are leveraging to be able to now position as a financial services hub. So I believe that's also what helped us to be able to get that quick traction. And yes, it's a competitive game. I mean, we're very much aware of that. But I think each country has a unique offering.
I spoke to one of my former professors recently, someone I admire a lot, Antonio Fatas. He is a professor of economics at INSEAD, and we spoke about a theory, economic development theory, that he wrote about many years back, and we revisited again to talk about the relevance, right? It's called the 4 Eyes model. So the theory basically states that for an economy to transform, you need to get these 4 things right.
Okay.
So the first one being institutions, the credibility of institutions, infrastructure, so the backbone to be able to support both physical and digital backbone, investments, because obviously it takes money, as you say, to make things happen. It's great to have a vision, but if you don't have any money, I think that vision just stays on paper, right?
Absolutely.
And the last one is innovation. We've talked in the past about how you're trying to create that ecosystem that allows not just Rwanda to thrive, but the continent, using Rwanda as a base. So when you reflect on what I've just described, that economic development theory, when you reflect on your mandate at KIFC, do you think that KIFC is achieving those objectives when you look across those four pillars?
No, absolutely. And KIFC is just one part
Yeah.
of making those four pillars come to life, right? And when you look at even our national strategy for transformation, we speak to one primary objective, and that's investment and innovation.
Yeah.
But the two won't exist without the first,
Sure.
right? And so for us, we look at it from the financial services and enabling environment. What do we have to do that is not already there for this to be able to happen? Let me maybe first speak to the innovation. We can see how AI is changing and revolutionizing financial services sector, but not only that sector, every sector as a whole. So there's no way we're going to speak about finance and being a financial hub without considering innovation. And so the question becomes, how prepared and ready is Rwanda for the AI revolution that we're seeing slowly creeping up? How can we leverage innovation, digital infrastructure, and talent to be able to facilitate investor attraction, but also access to this investment? And so there is a big pillar around fintech, financial technology, that also is part and parcel of our strategy as to how we position Rwanda as a financial services hub. Rwanda is already known as a proof of concept hub. So now how do we add the fintech layer to it? How do we facilitate investors to easily come test and deploy and scale across the continent from Rwanda? It's been done with the healthcare. We can now move it to financial services, for example. How do we facilitate regulation through passporting to allow for fintechs to set up and deploy? So that's also components around innovation that we are also, I would say, intentionally looking at. Now, investment attraction, once there's regulation, once there's ease of doing business, once there's an ecosystem that supports it, it comes naturally. So now what we have to guard is that Rwanda remains compliant. Rwanda remains a stable and credible and reliable jurisdiction, which already speaks to our national strategy and agenda. So we mainly look at the investment attraction piece, but we work across the ecosystem with our regulators to ensure there's credible institutions, right, that are servicing investors. We are working with our policymakers to ensure that there's a good enabling environment to allow for investment and innovation.
Obviously, Africa has no shortage of ambition and ideas, but we often struggle with execution and investor confidence. In your view, what creates institutional trust at scale? Because that is the backbone that you've talked about, right? What do you believe is that sort of ingredient that has allowed Rwanda to thrive? And also allow institutions at scale to, I guess, endure beyond perhaps just one person or a few people that are currently in power?
It's a great question. It's like three packed into one. But I think what builds trust is two things. What guidelines are in place that allows for one to systemize the process, and that always helps with execution at the end of the day. And the second, I believe, it's leadership. Then that ensures that the system and process is working and that there's accountability at the end of the day. So for Rwanda, I think what makes it work is that the two are there. When you see, even at a national level, we have what you call imihigo, performance contracts.
Tell me more.
At all levels of leadership, performance contracts. So every year, you sit down and then you see how you're contributing towards the national strategy for transformation and the key pillars that speak to you. And you report on those. And there is monitoring annually, biannually, quarterly, to ensure that you are following through and you're held accountable at all levels of leadership. And we also have a national dialogue that actually now speaks to how has performance been. So it's very intentional in holding leaders, but institutions accountable. So I think that also helps with execution. And it also helps to put institutions and leadership to be accountable and to make sure that we are following through. And now, when it comes to an institutional level, then you build the processes and systems that ensures, yes, you are aligned with what the policies say, but also internally that there are clear values that you integrate to be able to execute on. So I believe building the trust comes from those two.
Yeah.
That there is accountability built on a process and system being in place for execution, but there's also leadership that is held accountable to execute on it. And leadership also has a blueprint as to how, that has to be executed. And I think institutions, you'll also see that there are institutional values now that come to play as to how do we work on this together, right? How do we execute on this together? But if there's a clear national strategy, then it's easy to follow through. I also think it's because Rwanda is a smaller economy, it's easy to rally everyone.
Like running squads on a
easy
project, right? Exactly.
It's easy to rally. And like the relay, you run, pass the baton,
to the next person, yeah.
Absolutely. So I think we have integrated that into our DNA. So it's all about now, how do you
scale that?
Exactly. How do you scale that, and how do you, make it intentional?
You know what's so interesting? This little segment is super powerful, right? Because it applies in any form of leadership, whether be it at a government level, at a business level, even at a family level, right? Everything you're describing, accountability, systemizing process, leadership, and and almost cross accountability, right? So you keep me accountable, I keep you accountable. I think about the trust equation, right? And I've talked about this a few times. It says trust is a function of credibility, right? So you have to be credible. You have to have the tools to be able to do what you said you were going to do. But then you have to be reliable, right? So you can't just do it once and say, I've done it.
Absolutely.
I'm done now.
Yeah.
Right? And then intimacy is the last element of it. So intimacy is what builds that sort of close network, that sort of shared purpose, shared reason. And, that comes from perhaps also your history that happened 32 years ago that has created this connection across people. But what I find the most fascinating, and I've seen this play out because I've spoken to many leaders over here in Rwanda, is it has an inverse relationship with self-orientation. So basically selfishness or doing things for my own benefit. Everyone seems to be behind the national agenda, and it's not about my own agenda. So I think what you've described is super powerful, because how can leaders, business leaders, national leaders, take that template and almost think about their own journey from that perspective? So thanks for sharing that, because I really love it.